3 long years have passed, and the Riot fandom has been eagerly anticipating the release of Arcane Season 2 after that brutal cliffhanger we were left on at the end of Season 1. Quite possibly one of the very few instances where a video game company successfully made an animated series, Arcane was truly a masterpiece to behold and one that forever established League of Legends as more than just a game, but a pop culture phenomenon. In celebration of Season 2, I wanted to make something special. While it's since discontinued the series mostly due to lack of overall interest, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't one of the more rewarding topics to make, and considering I've yet to cover either faction involved in the Arcane mythos, I figured now's a good time as any to dust off the old lore and gameplay series to bring you not 1, but 2 episodes. You'll be happy to know that for this month I'll be making a piece on both Piltover and Zaun, talking about the connections between their respective regions and their champions, how they were shaped by their environments and narrative culture, and how they were translated into gameplay. Starting with Piltover and the hidden genius behind their champion designs. Contrasting from the more traditionalist medieval fantasy theme of the likes of Demacia and Noxus or the more fable-like areas of Ionia and Vandal City, Piltover comes across as a more contemporary locale. Known as the City of Progress, the land has developed a reputation for being a lodestone for innovation, craftsmanship, art, commerce, and science. Having a somewhat steampunk aesthetic, machinery and technology take precedence over military and magic. Throughout Arcane, we were able to observe all the different ways inventions and automation shaped the foundation of a city, giving it a modern look and incorporating magic and machine to create what has been coined Hextech. As one of the fastest growing nations in Runeterra, it's become a hotspot for anyone with a progressive and enterprising mind, lush with opportunity for people of all backgrounds to seize and turn into success. In a way, Piltover represents a more optimistic look on self-improvement. Over Noxus, they share a similar philosophy where power and status comes from merit and one's own capability, allowing anyone to be successful regardless of background, social class, or circumstance. However, it came with the repercussion of the society being built around the notion of every man for himself, that the strong rule over the weak. Freljord is practically identical. Anyone and everyone has equal opportunity to come into their own, only the motivation to do so is more out of necessity or in extreme cases desperation, for the alternative is quite literally certain death. The bright portrayal of Piltover is demonstrative of their more hopeful, promising motif, with their architecture having many light and vibrant colors, and the country often being shown with clear skies and a welcoming vibe, compared to the more dark, hostile, and desolate atmospheres of Noxus and Freljord, or the rigidity and uniformity of Demacia. In its entirety, Piltover stands as a beacon of innovation and opportunity, encouraging all who live there and all who endeavor to visit to pursue their ambitions and nurture their talents, coalescing into the annual Progress Day, a holiday marking the founding of Piltover and commemorating the revolutionary advancements the company has made, not just collectively but individually. Such ideology has been thoroughly ingrained in the hearts and minds of its citizens, leading to some of the most adaptable, resourceful, and quick-thinking champions throughout all of League of Legends. Though Piltover is known for its progress, it attempts to go about it in an orderly and controlled fashion, a method to the madness if you will, in contrast to Zaun, who is essentially a dark mirror to Piltover, operating on the inverse principle, madness to the method. As such, there are lines the country draws in the sand and has tried to follow as loyally as possible. Throughout the first season of Arcane, you can see Heimerdinger's hesitance to Jason Victor's cavalier approach to progress, believing that there is such a thing as going too fast. The contradiction between progress and austerity is ultimately what gave rise to their counterpart region Zaun, whose inhabitants are more willing to push boundaries and disregard potential risk factors in the name of progress. Regardless of who is right or wrong, their differing ideals are echoed throughout their champions. Across Piltover's roster, a running theme you might be aware of is how its cast members are known for impactful pressure and game-changing plays, yet the extent of their capabilities is often measured and predictable, not necessarily to imply they're honest champions, rather they tend to play at their best when everything is predictable, emblematic of their adherence to those boundaries and rules they set for themselves. Many of them might be strong, but never in a way that comes off opportunistic or like they're cheating. In exchange, members of Piltover are given the tools and resources to adapt to changes in circumstance, making them rather flexible in usage. As the current statesman of the region, no one exemplifies this more than Jace Talus, one of the few shapeshifting champions in the game and the only one to use a weapon to do so instead of actually transforming. Jace alternates between a melee hammer and ranged cannon form, each having a distinct purpose while at the same time playing into each other's win conditions, resulting in one of the most skill-expressive champions in the game and potentially one of the most difficult to master in spite of the straightforward applications of his individual abilities. His cannon form operates best when playing in neutral, where he can reliably dish out pressure through ranged auto attacks and his iconic shock blast. Comparatively, his hammer form excels more in advantage or disadvantage, wherein his melee skills enable him to pursue enemies or get them off of him. Having the ability to switch between melee and ranged offers a wide range of situational versatility compared to a champion solely committed to one or the other. This adaptability is present across all members of Piltover, each possessing a playstyle or aspect to them that allow them to thrive in a number of scenarios, with the caveat that the onus is on the player to select the most appropriate tool for the task at hand. Orianna is one of those champs that no team would complain about having, owing to her ability to attack and defend at the same time. Command Dissonance can deal a fairly sizable amount of damage while speeding up allies and slowing down enemies, therefore giving her the option to use it to chase or retreat. Command Protect, contrary to what its name might suggest, can also double as an offensive tool. While its base description may appear to be exclusively meant for protection, attaching it to a teammate who's engaging can allow her to use W and Ultimate more aggressively. And speaking of Ultimate, Command Shockwave also has potential to do either depending on how it's used. As one of the most senior figures of Piltover, Professor Heimerdinger's entire kit represents the notion of adaptability and innovation. His ultimate upgrades one of his basic abilities to have significantly increased power and impact. The challenge of mastering him comes down to knowing which of those upgrades, the Apex Turret, the Rocket Swarm, or the Lightning Grenade, will contribute the most benefit for your team, obligating the player piloting him to quickly think about what offers the best opportunity cost during that specific point in time. One last example of the adaptability of Piltover champions is Caitlyn, who in the eyes of many was always considered a very basic marksman to play, yet she has more tactical execution than she lets on. When compared to the hyper-aggression rushdown playstyles offered by Kai'Sa, Vayne, Samira and such, skill expression on Caitlyn's about knowing how to, once again, use your tools for offense or defense, potentially switching from one to the other very quickly. For instance, many see 90 caliber net as a retreat option to put distance between her and her opponent, while slowing them down to give her time to run away. However, 90 caliber net also guarantees a headshot on the target, granting an opportunity to attack even while you're trying to quote-unquote retreat. Likewise, her traps allow her to exert control over the surrounding area, something no other ADC has. You can use her traps to zone off enemies or even follow up on engage. Alternatively, you can set them ahead of time to cover your escape routes and so on. Playing Caitlyn requires more thought than just shooting anything that moves, but the payoff is certainly worth its weight in gold, with her extraordinarily long attack range on her headshot, autos, Q and ultimate, giving her the option to snipe enemies from a far distance when they least expect it. If you're looking for something more straightforward, look no further than Camille. Her passive literally adapts to whichever damage your target deals more of. You can't get any more simple than that. Just as Piltover rewards creative intuition and clever thinking, so too does its champions. By thinking outside the box, you can achieve a lot more with your given set of tools beyond what they offer from a superficial level. I understand many non-Piltover champions have that same thing, but where I'm getting at is that it's consistently present across all Piltover champs. The notion of thinking of the ways and how you can apply abilities to get the most value out of them. For a poke mage like Sarah, the premise is simple: fire like crazy, land as many skill shots as possible, and there you go. While Jace can also do that, spamming Shock Blast at a far distance. If that's all you're doing, you're not really using him to his fullest potential. All Piltover champions are fairly easy to pick up, having an accessible barrier to entry, but they can have deceptively high skill ceilings. Perhaps not skill in terms of mechanics, but skill in terms of decision making and how, when, or where to use your abilities. Understanding this will grant you a champion capable of responding to changes in the situation compared to other champs who usually go all in on one method of attack or win condition. Curiously, you can also observe the nuances in how much the champion is willing to push the envelope on their respective kits. Given how conservative, patient, and wait-and-see Heimerdinger is in Arcane, you can see that reflected in his playstyle where he prefers holding the line and waiting for his opponent to attack first before he strikes back, whereas someone like Jace, or especially Vi, is more willing to be proactive and force the issue. Just something I noticed while thinking about it. Another significant aspect of Piltover's champs that accentuate their desire to innovate and progress is the fact that most of them have abilities that can be improved by or synergized with their other abilities. The vast majority of champions in League have toolkits that, while they're ultimately meant to be used in tandem, function independently from each other on a conceptual level. As an example, Garen's Q grants him a long-lasting boost of speed followed by his silence, which enables him to stay on top of his target to get the full damage of Judgment off, followed by hopefully a finishing blow with Demacian Justice. Be that as it may, these abilities have no written synergy between each other, they just coincidentally work towards the same goal. The abilities of most Piltover champions have direct influence over other parts of their kit, which can compound how threatening they can be if properly mastered. Calling back to Caitlyn, both her W and E grant you an instant headshot with double attack range, making landing those abilities just as if not more important than manually stacking headshots through her passive. Moreover, Piltover Peacemaker guarantees the full damage against targets who recently stepped on a trap. These underlying factors are why there's such a conspicuous difference in pressure between a bad Caitlyn and a good one. You can take two headshots one after another followed by a full power Q right to the face, which with a 200% AD ratio hits like a truck. Or you'll just take 3 normal auto attacks. The difference is staggering. Jace is a fairly simple one with Shock Blast and Acceleration Gate. Firing his cannon Q through E will cause it to travel faster, farther, and explode in a larger radius to deal more damage. Triggering denting blows on Vi refunds a blast shield cooldown, as Real's W can be procced by any one of his other abilities in addition to auto attacks. Heimerdinger's stun grenade, if it lands on a champion, will cause all nearby turrets to immediately charge their laser attack and fire directly at said target. Orianna's abilities all stem from her bulk, which can be moved around to set up for the aforementioned offensive or defensive plays. Seraphine, Zaun, and Beatrock gain additional effects upon satisfying a prerequisite, of which you can do so via stage presence or also for Beatrock by opening up with Encore, allowing her to achieve a potential 3¼ seconds of AoE hard CC. Understanding the ins and outs of the so-called weapon you're using, the champion, is integral to the experience of playing a champion from Piltover. Their abilities not only have multiple use cases but ways in which they can be empowered internally, making use of missing one ability can be more damaging for your pressure than if you were playing someone else. However, it can be more enhancing for your pressure if you do land everything perfectly, underscoring the need to think of what more can be done with what you have. One more detail I think is worth mentioning is that despite their different backgrounds and playstyles, the champions of Piltover are notably strong when operating in pairs. Throughout Arcane, there were multiple instances where characters were working or pairing together, and even prior to Arcane, Vi and Caitlyn were sisters in arms. Not sure if this is only coincidence, but while champions from other factions like the Void and Noxus prefer to fly solo, an underlying sense of teamwork is encouraged among Piltover. Take the two law enforcers, Caitlyn and Vi. Vi's ability to lock down a single enemy makes it extremely easy for Caitlyn to set a trap under them or land isolated Qs and ultimates to finish the job. Oriana's ball can augment Camille and Vi to give them a faster way in while they set up the former for a strong shockwave. Speaking of shockwave, Oriana's ability to group enemies together in a tight circle enables champions like Heimerdinger, Jace, and Seraphine to land critical follow-ups that would otherwise be a lot less effective against a team spread out. Additionally, Seraphine's Encore having the unique property to extend its range by coming in contact with friend as well as foe can play off Vi and Camille's engage. Coordination between two or more members of Piltover can produce a drastically better result than simply playing them individually. Furthermore, they play a lot better when everything is working accordingly. Considering many of them have attacks that are based on position and/or precision, the less chaos there is, the better for them. Caitlyn operates best when she can focus on a single target, not so much in teamfights where all hell breaks loose. Oriana relies on a team being in the right spot equally as much as she relies on the enemy team being in the wrong spot. Heimerdinger is all about fighting around his turrets. In a more chaotic environment, he might have trouble repositioning too often. All of Seraphine's abilities become stronger if her team plays around them and stays together as a unit. In a way, you can interpret Piltover and by extension his champions as a well-oiled machine. When things are in order and everything's in place, they can be some of the most powerful champions in the game. Conversely, if everything's going to or there are too many variables, the machine malfunctions and they can feel completely useless. I think it's honestly quite fitting. Throughout the first season of Arcane, you could see Piltover gradually destabilizing as tension continued to develop between Piltover and Zaun. Adding more chaos to the mix disrupted the safety and functionality of the region, highlighting how tenuous that stability actually was. The whole relationship between Piltover and Zaun is an interesting dynamic. Piltover has been trying to keep Zaun under control so as to preserve the status quo, while Zaun's becoming increasingly more discordant and volatile, resulting in the growing possibility of an all-out war between the two nations. In-game, Piltover's champions operate best when everything is orderly and everyone's working together, whereas Zaun's champions operate best when everything runs amok and the battlefield is chaotic and scattered. The juxtaposition is fascinating. Both sides are known for innovation and creative ingenuity, but they go about them in divergent ways. Better yet is that because Vi was originally from Zaun and Victor was originally from Piltover, you can see how elements of their former homeland are still a part of them. Vi certainly performs excellently when she works with other people, but among Piltovans, she's the one most adaptable to a chaotic teamfight. Victor's abilities are all over the place and can deal ridiculous amounts of damage even scattered about, but you can still notice remnants of his Piltovan background, wherein he too works incredibly well when fighting alongside those who can help him. More to that, I think it's also interesting that so many members from Piltover and Zaun can work really well together, which may have been Riot's way of depicting that despite the two nations being at odds with one another, in a twisted way they still depend on each other. That concludes my Piltover section of this two-part miniseries. Hope you guys enjoyed my theories on the connections between their lore and gameplay, and I do hope you guys are looking forward to my next episode on Zaun. For the time being, I'd appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and why not watch my other lore episodes while you wait. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you again soon for Zaun. Take care.